Because if you talk to a friend, right? If
you know everything
I've been in this
there
scenario,
is to know.
like you know what you would tell your friend.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, yeah, girl, you need to leave. I don't know what you're thinking. He's obviously, you know, you could do so much better. And, you know, then the tables get turned and you're there acting it all out. This is kind of what I reacted to earlier when I was fumbling around. And then the tables get turned on you and someone says to you, Danica, what would you say to me if I said all these things? And I was like, oh shit, you gotta go.
Yeah.
I believe that each and every one of us has the power within ourselves to create the life that we really want. And I want to help give you the tools to make that happen. I'm Danica Patrick, and I'm pretty intense. Today's guest is Najwa Zebian. She is a poet, an author, a speaker. She is wise beyond her years. She's 29 years old. She was born in Lebanon, but lives in Canada now. And her insightfulness into life and the experiences that we have and the self-reflection that she's been able to generate and grow from, just her awareness for human nature and how to heal is really, really impressive. I'm just so impressed with Najwa, and I've been following her for years. Her poems are so powerful. It's amazing what one sentence of hers can make you feel. So I just thoroughly enjoyed the conversation that we had, public, live in front of an audience, which was a totally different setting. So we just talked about the struggles that go on in life and the things that we are all dealing with. And I just very much appreciate her vulnerability and honesty, and really look forward to just becoming better friends with her. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I remember seeing you on social media, and you were in your car, and you were talking to your phone in your car. And I just thought that the words that you were saying were so meaningful, and the feeling that you were portraying in them was so deep, and I just was compelled by it. So it's been a long time since I feel like those were your videos, right? That you still do them every now and again.
Yeah,
but can
I
you
do.
take me back to the girl in the car recording videos a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so that was me probably after a long day of teaching when I had so many thoughts in my mind, or right before I went to teach in the morning when my thoughts were just fresh and I needed to get something out. And that was just my way of journaling in a way, like in a very private manner, but putting it out to this world that no one else around me like belonged to. So it was just an intensity of thoughts and feelings that I felt I had to somehow put out there, and I didn't really care about the format. Like I didn't care about sitting in front of a professional camera and just waiting until then. I just needed to get it out right there.
Was that the beginning of sharing publicly?
The beginning was on Instagram, probably a few months before sharing videos from my car. I remember the very first video, I was sitting in our backyard, and I started it by saying, so maybe you're a little too sensitive, or maybe when you love, you give too much love. Maybe when you care about someone, you give them a little too much care. But what does too much even mean? I remember that was my very first video, and people reacted to it so well. And I think now they got to see me in a different way. Like they had always read my writings and they'd seen them being typed out in videos, but they'd never seen me in action. So that's what started it. Yeah.
So that was the first time that there was like the automated, the verbal version versus the written version.
Yes.
How early was the written version out for the public to see?
That would have been 3 years ago. So I would say 3 to 4 months before I started putting videos out there. Yeah. But before that, I had been writing for 3 years. So I started writing at 23. And then at 26, I put out my first collection of writing, Mind Platter. And yeah, a few months after that, I started putting out videos. And I still do them from my car sometimes. Sometimes,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
But now I'm more likely to sit in my office in a well-lit corner and just put my phone in front of me and speak to it. I still do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it like therapy?
Yes. Many times, and I think many people don't realize this, is when I sit in front of the camera to say something, more often than not, I'm saying it to myself first before I say it to anyone else. So if I'm going through a difficult time where, say, I'm feeling very weak or I'm feeling like I'm just not myself, and I'll start the video by saying, if you're feeling weak or if you're feeling like you're not yourself, this is what I want you to remember. And I would say the message to myself, but also to others at the same time. Yeah.
That's so brave.
It's very therapeutic. Thank you.
I remember I was asked to make a self video of how I felt about my last race, the Indy 500 in 2018. And it was for my documentary. And I didn't even want to do that. Like, I felt too vulnerable to do that I was like, I don't like talking to the camera. I don't get it. I just didn't feel comfortable. So there's such a level of bravery. Do you recognize that you're basically journaling to the public? Does it feel like that to you?
Well, we all have feelings. Like, we all go through things. I'm past the point in my life where I want people to look at me and say, "Oh, Najwa is so strong all the time." I'm not there. I truly believe that you can be a strong person and still have moments of doubt. You can be a strong person and still have a moment of vulnerability. You can be a strong person and still be braving and becoming strong through something. Like, you don't reach that point where you say, yeah, I've overcome so many things in my life and that's it. And to me, if I'm telling everyone out there, be yourself and be vulnerable and be authentic, then I have to be my authentic self too. I don't believe in leading just by words. I believe that you have to put your words to action, and that's what I'm doing. So sometimes you'll see me, with barely any makeup on and my hair is still curly, and sometimes you'll see me all done up, and that's just me showing every part of who I am, and I just know, before, I think I used to worry so much about just a few select people. Like, what is he gonna think, or what is she gonna think if I put up this video or this post? And over time, someone asked me a question, I think it was last year, saying, like, don't you worry about what your critics think? Or don't you worry about, those who don't have the same beliefs that you have? And I said, but I'm not here to amplify their voice. If I stay quiet and hide myself because I'm worried about what the critics will say, then I'm amplifying their voice. I said, I amplify the voice of the girl or the boy who's sitting in that dark corner, who doesn't have anyone who can say, I understand, or let me help you up. That's whose voice I amplify. And so if my focus is that, I really don't care about what the critics will say, or what those who don't believe that vulnerability is the way or authenticity is the way. And I don't focus on them anymore.
It's confidence. So who was that girl back then? If you were to describe that girl, that was 2017, I think. I think that was probably
2000, yeah.
It was
2016,
over 2 years ago.
Yeah,
16.
Yeah.
So sort of like, give me the snapshot of Najwa then.
She was very scared. She was feeling very small, and like her voice didn't matter at all to anyone or anything. She was very hard on herself and put literally everyone else ahead of her. And in a way, she didn't really know who she was at all. She defined herself by, the praise she got after a job well done, and defined herself by how much she was able to give. And that's it, not by who she was at all. And she got to a point where she would look in the mirror and not recognize who she was looking at.
That's very self-reflective and powerful to be able to recognize those things. We tend to not want to say the things about ourselves that aren't so fantastic. But I'm going to bet that's because you've overcome a lot of those things and you're working through a lot of those things. But before we talk about some of those specifics, like some specific topics that are very interesting to me about growth, I want to talk about where you grew up. So you grew up in Lebanon.
Yeah, I was born and raised there.
You were born and raised there. We were just talking about this before, but you are one of 6 kids. So kind of give me like where you grew up and your family, and then talk about Lebanon. I want to hear about what's the culture like there? What are the values? What are the expectation levels? What are the struggles? What's beautiful about it? I want to understand what Lebanon was like and what your childhood was like.
So my earliest memories in Lebanon were of me sitting on our balcony with my grandma. So we would have the power there you only get power like 4 hours a day, and then it turns off, and then you get it. So it alternates basically, and you get it for half of the day. And so every other night, especially in the summer, you could sit outside and look at the stars. And we lived on a mountain and we were surrounded by mountains. And my earliest memories were of me sitting with my grandma and listening to stories from her. Just, stories about, some of them were religious, but some of them were, stories about her and her kids, my uncles and my aunts. And so those were my earliest memories. And then I remember growing up, and my mom and dad would travel a lot to Canada to stay with my siblings so long story short, my 5 siblings were born like right after each other. And then 8 years later, I was born. So there was a big age gap between me and them. And so, my sister, who's the oldest in the family, moved here when I was 3 years old. She moved to Canada when I was 3 years old. So I don't have many memories with my siblings. So when they all came here, my parents started coming to visit them, and I would live with whichever relative could take care of me at the time. And I know my parents had the best intentions with that. I never doubted that, to them it was just like, we're throwing her wherever. I think they truly trusted that this was the best thing to do. And so I just remember this feeling of being out of place and just being quiet, a quiet observer. I was just constantly looking at the adults around me and just learning from them. And I remember learning also from a very young age to, again, derive that feeling of I'm good enough by who I pleased or whether I did well in school.
Is that where you got the praise? Was when you did those things?
Yeah. So in school, I was the kid that the principal would bring up to the front of the school and say, I want everyone to be like her. So there was, and I was genuinely a good child. Like I didn't try to misbehave in any way. It wasn't appealing to me at all. I remember always trying to do the right thing, but I also remember only deriving whether I was good or not, whatever that meant, from those comments. And yeah, I just remember it like in black and white, to be honest. The culture there, we were just talking about this. Like, there were many things that I didn't even start reflecting on until the last year of my life, to ask myself, like, do I really believe this? And where did this way of thinking come from? So where I lived was a very tiny village, and I started attending an Islamic school when I was in grade 7. And every summer, even from, I think it was starting grade 3 or even before that, I would go to summer camp at our local mosque. And there were a lot of like clearly defined female and male gender roles, and just the idea that I had in my mind growing up was my life is going to be, you go to school, you finish, you get married, you have kids, and you work a job that allows you to live that kind of life. So that was the trajectory I had in my mind. And I know many people from several cultures have that. But in my culture, there's a lot of shame attached to what a girl does or what she doesn't do or how she behaves or doesn't behave. Like, I remember when I started writing and putting my writings out there, a clear comment from a relative, you know, but you're a girl. She said that to me, and she said, like, what are people, but you're a girl, you know, but you're a girl, you can't, and I was bringing up the point of, you know, look at all these other poets who are doing this stuff. And so I brought up like Khalil Gibran, who's a huge Lebanese poet, very celebrated. And she said, but you're a girl. Like, people are now knowing what your feelings are, and you shouldn't be, like, how are you going to get married? Like, who's going to want to marry you? And because I was, you know.
So what is the role of a Lebanese woman or wife or even child?
I wouldn't say that it's 100% a certain thing, because I know there are people who are way more progressive, but from where I came, your role was to, again, you know, you finish school, if that, and then you get married and have kids, and you know, your best shot is getting a teaching job, because that allows you to, you know, stay with your kids. But I wouldn't say, again, there are several areas in Lebanon where people are a lot more open-minded, and it's not like that. Lebanon is actually one of the better countries in that whole region that does give women rights. Yeah.
One of the things that you've done that I would think goes against the culture that you grew up in was, and when I first saw you making your videos, you wore the hijab, and you stopped wearing that last year.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Was it a big deal? Was it not? Was it a big deal to others, but not you?
Deal.
I mean, I would think.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. I remember making the decision months before I actually went forward with it. Yeah, because first I had to, and that's when I realized the internalized shame I had. I had to prove to myself first before anyone else that I wasn't choosing to take it off because I'm submitting to the pressure of the world saying, like, show your body. I had to make sure.
Right.
And I felt I couldn't imagine walking outside with like my neck showing. I couldn't imagine it. I felt like I would be walking outside naked if I were to do that. It was terrifying. And, you know, that's just me dealing with it, let alone opening up to someone saying, you know what, I don't want to wear the hijab anymore. I've been wearing it since grade 7, but I don't want to wear it anymore. And the questions always came like, why? Why do you want to take it off? Like and so there was a hidden, I guess, motive that many were trying to feed me, saying things like, you only want to take it off because you want to show your body, because you know, you want to engage in certain behaviors that good girls don't engage in. And so you're something is rotting on the inside.
Yeah.
And so that affected me quite a bit.
Yeah. I would think that there's, makes you question things probably. But the best thing was it made you check in with yourself as to what you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I guess as much as the question is, why did you want to take it off, is why do you wear it in the first place? Why is that part of culture in the first place?
So in grade 7, when I wore it, that's when I started going to
Is
the
that
Islamic
when everyone
school.
starts, or is that just when you started?
So,
I mean, what's the normal formality?
Yeah, so the norm is if you want to follow religious guidelines, you would wear it, a girl would wear it when she hits puberty. And again,
what does that mean? I mean, like, does that mean when you get boobs, or what does it mean when you hit puberty?
When you get your period.
You go, oh wow, so everyone knows when you get your period. That's awesome. That's not revealing at all.
Like, that's when it becomes an obligation, basically. Wow. And in the most traditional forms of the religion, there are people who will tell you, no, that's not the case. I always have to be careful because I don't want to offend anyone.
Sure.
I know that several people who believe in the Muslim faith will tell you, no, that's a different interpretation. But that's where I came from.
Right.
Like, that's how it was for me.
Right.
Is that you wear it once you get your period.
Right.
And all of the girls in my class wore it. And you were considered like a good girl if you wore it, like that was a celebrated thing to do. If we had, first of all, we had to wear it during school all day. You could take it off when you get home, but you had to wear it at school. It was part of the uniform. But it was made into such a big deal if you wore it. And I just wanted to fit in, and I wanted to look like my older sister who wore it. And I remember clearly when I first put it on, my dad took me aside and said, are you sure this is something you want to do? Because it's a big responsibility. And I said, yes, I want to. Most of the women around me wore it, so I didn't see a problem. And then I even remember right before I moved to Canada, my dad took me aside and said, I know you're a very sensitive person. You're going to a new country where people are going to judge you for the way you look. If you want to take your hijab off, take it off. And I said, no, I want to wear it. Like, I didn't imagine that it would be hard in any way. It had been part of my identity for a while. So
judgment is such a common thing for anything. And so I would imagine that just as much as, you don't want to be judged for wearing it, you don't want to be judged for not wearing it, you also don't judge anyone else for wearing it or for not wearing it. It's merely a personal choice. So did you feel like, because I mean, this is common with no matter who we are, or if any of us are different or something that even just looks different about us, did you feel misjudged when you wore it because it wasn't the norm? Did it?
When I came to Canada?
Yeah.
I honestly was so unaware of it being a problem. And that goes to show you how invisible I felt at the time. If people didn't look, good. I didn't want anyone to look anyway. If people didn't talk to me, good. I didn't want to be spoken to anyway. I was in survival mode when I came here. I first realized that it was a problem when I was 19 years old on my way to university. And I clearly remember an older gentleman sitting right at the back of the bus. And he was bigger and like tall and full of tattoos. And he kept staring at me the whole way. And I was wearing a long jean skirt and a white shirt that had little pink and blue flowers on it and a white hijab. And I remember I loved that skirt because I inherited it from my sister. And I was happy. I was in a good mood. And then he stood up to get off the bus and he just looked at me as he was stepping outside and said, you're in Canada. You don't have to dress like that. And I just looked down and started bawling my eyes out. And the woman in front of me turned around and said, I'm so sorry. He shouldn't have spoken to you that way. So that was the first time that I understood fully, this is a problem that to some people. And so I remember going home that day and asking myself, like, why do I wear this?
Yeah.
And do I want to wear it? And to me at the time, it was a decision of, do I choose courage and say, this has been part of my identity for so long, and I'm not going to take it away just so that I could please people's eyes? Or do I give in and take it off and just blend in and be happy that way? And so I chose courage at that point and said, I'm going to continue wearing it, because to me, this is a statement that says, like, you don't have the right to dictate for me what I need to look like just so that you don't treat me that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to talk about judgment for just a second, just because I think it's such a universal thing, and I'm guilty of it. I judge things every single day, and I do my best to try and correct it and try and think the best and retrain my brain to not do it. But it happens. Mm-hmm. So why do we judge? Like, what do you think was going through that guy's mind when he told you that? Why do we judge?
I think we judge because we have our own definition on the inside of what's right and wrong. And when we have, it's kind of like you put a barrier in front of that, because you don't want to come to terms with the fact that perhaps your way of thinking is not the right way of thinking. So you want to defend your own beliefs in a way. And so that's how that comes across. Instead of saying, like, why do I have a problem with her being covered? You're just saying her being covered is a problem and I need to do something about it to change it. So it's a level of denial that about your own beliefs, and that maybe they need to change. I think that's part of judgment. I also think part of judgment is wanting to feel better about yourself, and by putting someone else down and seeing the reaction on their face and seeing that you have power in a way over that person because you just got to them. And, there's a poem in Sparks of Phoenix where I say, never wish them pain. That's not who you are. Wish them healing. That's what they need. And I really think that way towards anyone who judges me, because I think they need healing. It's not that I could have easily, stood up that day and chased after him and said something terrible. At the time, seeing a tattoo, to me, based on my beliefs, that was a sin. Like, you don't get a tattoo. But I didn't even think about that. Mine. No, but I don't think that way anymore. But I was 19 and I had been in Canada for 3 years.
That would have been the equivalent of the reciprocation of the judgment.
Yeah, exactly. A tattoo would have meant that person is going to hell.
Right.
That's what it would have meant. I could have said that to him, but I didn't think of it because I didn't look at people to classify them in a certain way. Like, you're right, you're wrong, you're going to heaven, you're going to hell,
That's not who you are.
No.
I want to read another poem. I want to talk about home.
Yeah.
Home is one of those things for me that hits home. Whether it's been home as in living. I've lived in a lot of places, and I'm one that tends to move for relationships. And then there's, of course, that next level of it, which is building homes in someone else. And I feel like that was really one of those videos that, I think you said it, you did a TED Talk too, right? And I remember watching the TED Talk a few times, and you talked about that and not building homes in other people. And man, that was really powerful. So I want to read one of your writing, and then dive into it. You were my home. Why was it so hard for me to let go of you? I had no home, and with that, I was content, because I never knew what it felt like to feel home. I never knew what it felt like to feel like home. So you built a home for me, and I finally felt like I belonged. All of my scattered pieces suddenly came together. Somewhere I put my heart to sleep. As you cradled my worries away, I woke up one day cold, abandoned, without a roof on top, without windows or walls, without you. And you wonder why I'm unable to let you go. Before you, I never knew what a home was. You gave me a taste of heaven. and with your hands you took it away. Once you enter heaven, you can never live again the same way. Home is so many meanings. So what does home mean to you? What was, I mean, talk to me about that poem in particular, maybe. Start there.
I wrote that poem after a terrible heartbreak that I went through. And the best way I could explain it was that I felt homeless. I felt like I had tasted a feeling that I knew I was longing for my whole life without knowing what it was. But it was that feeling of home, which is feeling like you belong unconditionally, just as you are. Like you don't have to beg someone for their love. Like you don't have to, change parts of who you are to be welcome and accepted. And that was the first time in my life that I had felt that way. And it was an addictive feeling. And so I that's why I wrote at the end, once you enter heaven, you can never live again the same way. Yeah. To me, that feeling of home was heaven. Mm.
Did you build a home in that person?
Yes.
What did that teach you?
It taught me to never build a home in someone else. It taught me that I needed to start building a home within myself. It taught me, I would say the most important lesson it taught me is, the feeling of emptiness that you feel when someone walks away. You feel like I've given so much of myself and I put it inside that person and they're gone, and you just feel like you're a loose leaf in the wind, and you just don't know where you are. You don't know exactly. You don't matter. You feel like you have nothing that grounds you. You don't know who you are. All you're focused on is that person. And you think that just because they walked away with so much of what you invested in them, that they're the only person who could give it back to you. And that's what I hung on to for so long, until I realized that feeling of emptiness was okay, because I really did put so much of myself into that person. And my intention wasn't to feel empty. My intention was to genuinely give that person the love that I felt towards him. And my intention wasn't to deplete myself. My intention was, I'm investing this in someone who I deeply care about, so I can come home at the end of the day to these things that I'm putting there. Mm. So that feeling of emptiness is real. And so where do you go from there? And that's when it hit me. If I'm really fixated on what I gave that person, then that in a way makes me selfish, because I want to take back what I gave. Instead, why don't I focus on the fact that I was the source of that love? I was the source of that respect. I was the source of that kindness that I gave to that person, that I invested in that person, that I built a home in that person with. If I am the source, then I can recreate that from within myself, for myself, moving forward. Why would I beg someone to give me something back when I am the one who had the ability to create it in the first place? Why put myself at the mercy of a recipient of something that I created? That was the biggest realization I made. Mm-hmm.
How did you build a home in yourself? What were some of the things that you did? What do you do on a regular basis? Maybe it's every day, maybe it's every month.
To build a home within yourself, you have to start by understanding where you are. You have to start by understanding the value of a home, and you have to start by understanding yourself as a person. Because you can know everything there is to know about self-love, because that's the first thing you hear. Like when you get out of a relationship or out of anything, any difficult circumstance in your life, people say, well, you need to focus on self-love. You need to know what your worth is. And I was at a point in my life after that where I thought I knew what my worth is. And because I could talk to you about it. I could tell you, I would never accept this kind of treatment. If a guy spoke to me that way, or if someone at work spoke to me that way, I would never accept it. You can learn. I come from a teaching background, right? I can teach my students. I can put a lecture up on the screen. I can test them and make sure that they've memorized something or that they've understood a concept. But the most important thing is whether they will apply it or not, whether they know how to apply it or not. So many times they don't. They'll do really well on knowledge. They'll do really well on, problem solving. But when it comes to application, they don't know how to apply it. And that's the problem. It's the same thing with our lives.
Right.
You can know everything there is to know about worth, but
well, that's the conscious.
Right.
The conscious, you can go, oh, I learned that. That's good. Oh yeah, don't take that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna put up with that. But the subconscious, the autopilot kicks into gear and it says, no, we repeat this pattern.
Yes.
This is where you're safe.
Yes,
we
exactly.
repeat, even if it doesn't make sense, even if it feels horrible, we repeat the pattern because that's what's familiar.
Exactly.
So there's two parts. One, how do you find out who you are? And then what are your routine rituals to reprogram? Because that's the important part, right? It's like with judgment. I think to myself, yes, I judge every day, but I used to judge and not think anything of it. And then I was a much more negative person. Now I judge less. And when I judge, I try and correct it, right? Because that's the reprogramming thought of correction. And then you look at something, you go, oh, wow, maybe doing their best. You know what? Like, wow, that person was really rude. And you go, you have no idea. I have no idea what kind of day they've had. And you try and correct it. And then over time you have less corrections and you're a more positive person. That's how I try and do it. But first off is how do you know who you are? Because that's the hardest thing. The hardest thing to truly know who the hell you are. Because you're always bombarded with your phone, with looking at pictures of other people, what other people say. You have family around, you have a partner that's judging, that has, you slip into your routines again with family, culture telling you what's cool, what's not cool. There's so many things that make it really hard to know who you are minus everything else. So how do you do that?
You know who you are by listening to yourself, by staying silent and just allowing your brain, your heart, and your soul to speak to you. Because what does your phone do? It distracts you. It numbs your feelings. What do your family, relatives, community, what do they all do? They are numbing techniques. They are distractions. They are, anything. Like, I just want to do anything except for sit with myself, right? Yeah. And I was like that for a long time. I would go to events, or I would, go sit in a crowded place just because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts.
Wow.
You sit in silence and you listen, because those voices from inside of you, those are your beliefs about yourself talking to you, telling you this is what you think of yourself. Just like, for example, after a rejection that you go through, think of the first things that come to your mind. You're not good enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not worthy. And do you want to listen to those voices? No, you don't. You want to go to listen to a friend who tells you he's a jerk or she's a jerk or you deserve better. You want to listen to all those things, but are you really solving? Are you going to the root of the problem and working on it? I had a friend, and he's here right now, who a few months ago, I called him and I said, like, my heart physically hurts. It hurts on the inside. I can't do this anymore. I can't take this pain anymore. And it was after a heartbreak. And he said to me, Najwa, I think the problem is much deeper than that. It's much deeper than this person. This problem is not about this person, because you've experienced it before. multiple times and you come to the same realization that tells you you're not worthy of love, you're not worthy of belonging, you need to go to the root of the problem and work on it. And that was like such a powerful wake-up call for me, because it's true, it wasn't that person. It was my belief about myself that I'm not worthy of love. That's what hurts. It's not someone walking away. It's that I truly and genuinely didn't believe that I was worthy of love. That's what hurts.
You are out of resonance with love, which is what we all are, pure love. And we let all of these other things interfere with the resonance that wants to happen. So I feel like that's an extremely great way to explain how you can recognize when you need to deal with something because it doesn't feel good. It's out of resonance. It's a negative, it's a lower vibration feeling trying to meet you where you are, which is love, like goodness. And but we get it messed up. We get it muddled.
Can you understand that about yourself without taking the time to listen to yourself? You can't. You can go to a therapist and you can speak to them for hours, but what you speak is often not 100%, reflective of what you're feeling on the inside. Because when you speak, in a way, you want to be an advocate for yourself. And at the same time, you don't want that person who's sitting across from you to think any less of you or to judge you. You have to sit with yourself and say, I believe this about myself. Or this is my way of thinking. This is what's going through my mind. And if it hurts, I'm going to cry. And if it requires that I distance myself from everyone around me for a couple of weeks, then I'm going to do it. And if it requires that I have to make changes in my life, I'm going to do it. So it begins by listening. Just do this at home for 5 minutes. I challenge you. Close your eyes and just don't have any sound or any noise around you for 5 minutes. Put a timer on your phone. You think it's easy, but it's not. It's actually so difficult because it's kind of like, muddy water that you've allowed to settle for a long time, and now all of a sudden you're shaking it. And sometimes you don't know exactly what that mud is telling you or what it is, but it feels like there's a hurricane on the inside. You're so uncomfortable with your own silence. And that's the beginning of your awakening to who you are. And then the hard work begins, because now you need to change those beliefs, and you change them by asking yourself, why do I believe this about myself? Like, what has happened? We talked about this earlier too. What has happened earlier in my life, or even more recently in my life, that has proven this belief to me about myself? And if I could go back to that moment, say a certain moment made you believe that, you're not good enough to become a doctor, let's just say that. Go back to that moment and ask yourself, was that actually true? Like, was what I felt and that belief that I formed about myself, was that actually true? Or did I just take someone's word for it? Or did I just amplify a tiny feeling and allow it to become a solidified belief about myself? Have you been able
to break it down and get to not only the root emotion that comes up, that's the problem, but maybe the person?
Yes. I would say it's been multiple people, to be honest, because once you form a certain belief about yourself and it becomes deeply rooted within you, whether you're aware of it or not, you go out into the world and you search for proof that that's true.
Oh my God, yes,
right?
You do. You do.
So if you believe that you're not good enough, you wake up in the morning and you leave your place and you're constantly looking for, if that person didn't smile back at me, you file it in that folder that says you're not good enough. You say, see? But here's a revolutionary thought. What if you left your place in the morning saying, I am good enough, and I'm going to look for every confirmation that I am good enough? Do you see how that shifts everything? So instead of viewing things negatively or viewing people's behaviors, who each and every one of them has their own things that they're going through, to mean something about yourself, you're celebrating everything that's good out there and saying, see, like this is,
That's an incredible challenge. And it's not, it sounds exciting. Like, I think that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. In fact, that's what I'm going to do starting right now.
Everybody should do.
Because that's actually my core belief that I have a problem with, is that I'm not enough. So I look for evidence, just like you said. I look for evidence in everything in my life, relationships, all that kind of stuff, about how I'm not enough. And because you want to validate it, because your ego says, no, we live here. We live with this hormone. We live with this chemical reaction that happens in the body when we find reasons why we're not good enough and we're not enough. And it feels good. And I need you to repeat. I need you to press the button. I need you to keep pressing the button. And this is stuff that's beyond the scope of my knowledge to be able to just dump on you guys so easily. But there's a chemistry to all of this. In fact, the episode that's coming out this week with Joe Dispenza, he goes into a lot of this about the chemical reaction in the brain. But we do. It's like a drug. We're chemically programmed to repeat those things to ourselves because it feels a certain way and there's a response that happens. But I love, it's a reprogramming. If every day you could just wake up and say, today I'm going to go out, and whatever it is that is your insecurity, is to go out and go, I'm going to find evidence why I'm the other, right? Why I am good enough, or why I am smart enough, or why I am pretty enough, or whatever it is that is a reprogramming that will change your life.
Yes. It's life-changing, seriously. Just try it for a day.
Wow.
Go out, whatever belief it is that you have about yourself, make it the opposite and say, just for one day, because it's easier for us to take challenges on that don't, make us feel like we're stepping outside of our comfort zone for too long. Say, I'm just going to do it for a day, or even just for an hour, and go out consciously thinking in your mind, I am looking for proof of the opposite of that core belief that I have. And you'll start seeing things differently. I was going to go back to one of the points you were making earlier about why we keep doing certain things. We talked about how it's familiar. But, say, for example, you're used to checking someone's social media, someone who's really, like an ex, someone who's really not good for you.
Social stalking?
Yeah. But say you're checking and you see that person is liking someone's pictures and it bothers you, But why do you keep going back to check when you know that's going to be the answer? Even though you're going to feel terribly afterwards. Evidence. Why do you do it? It's because that confirmation within you that's like, see, I told you so. In a way, you feel like you've proven something to yourself. And I used to be like that. Right now, I follow that up with a question. I tell myself, so what if you prove that to yourself? What will you do based on that? So what? What if you do prove that someone, is liking someone else's pictures, which somehow you translate in your mind to mean that you're not good enough? What if you do discover that? You go on social media and you do discover that they're still doing that, and you're confirming that to yourself every single day. So what? What does that mean? And what are you going to do about it once you discover it? Because there should be some form of action. You think that you're going to feel, like I've proven this to myself. You're going to feel great, right? But you don't. So I always say, so what will you do after you discover, that it's a confirmation or not? What are you going to do? And when I focus on that question, it's like reverse psychology. I don't even do the behavior that's going to lead me up to it, because the answer to that, so what, is I can't do anything. There's nothing. that I can do about it.
Or just feel worse, which why would anyone willingly sign up for that?
Yeah.
You don't consciously sign up for that, you subconsciously sign up for that. So if you can activate the conscious, which is what it sounds like you're talking about, you can start to overpower the subconscious instincts.
Yes.
To find evidence for the subconscious to keep feeding these insecurities.
Yes.
Powerful. Fantastic. I want to read another another poem.
The Nectar of Pain.
Well, this is the first book. Mind Platter is the first book. And I actually want to show you, I'm not going to read it all because, you wrote me a message, but this was sent to me with a beautiful message. And Najwa said that, I hope that we get to meet. Now we only know each other virtually, but I hope to meet you one day. And this was a couple of years ago. So we've manifested this.
Yes.
But I want to read about another one about healing. I just think it's really wonderful to, read some of these so people can get, I have tons of folds in these books because they just are meaningful things. And some of them are things that I wanted to read for you guys. And some of these were just things that really are meaningful to me that are a little bit more personal. But it's about healing because I feel like what we've been talking about is healing and how we can be an alchemist in our life and change what feels bad into something that feels good. I will heal. I sincerely hope that your soul finds peace. You broke me, but it was only because you were broken. I will heal because I know that I need to, but I worry that you will never realize that you are in need of healing. Hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
Right?
They do.
And I think that's, I feel like that speaks to that part of you, which is saying that's not who you are to judge or to react. It's not who you are. So, but it's our own, you can't make someone do something. I feel like this is common with anything. You can't make someone think differently, act differently. They might temporarily do it because they feel that there's some kind of a consequence or they're on the hot seat. But real change does not happen unless you decide to make the real change. So that was a poem to me that recognizes that, you know what, I realized that I needed to change and I needed to let you go. But I actually still have compassion for you because you need help too. Like we all need help. It's really powerful.
I think looking back at that poem, I know that I wrote it at a point when I was still in so much pain, but I couldn't bring myself to be angry with that person for hurting me the way that he did. And I just worked by my true core, which was, even though I know that you might never realize that you've made terrible mistakes in your life, I do sincerely hope that you find healing. I do sincerely hope that you heal one day. And I was hurting so much when I wrote that, but it brought me a certain level of relief because I was not choosing the same. In Mind Platter, I wrote, don't give them a taste of their own medicine. They already know what it tastes like. Give them a taste of your own medicine. If they lied to you, let your medicine be honesty. If they made you cry, let your medicine make them smile. I was working by the words that I truly believed in, which was, I didn't receive my closure. No one said, oh, you have this, because it wasn't a physical wound. It was a wound on my soul. Even though no one had seen that at that point. No one acknowledged it or validated it, but I knew I was bleeding on the inside. I was still able to say, I wish you healing. I hope that you heal. And the relief that brought me was I'm not allowing someone who is not me to make me someone who I'm not. And I'm very grateful that I was able to see things that way instead of, wanting to hurt that person the same way that he hurt me.
Yeah. That brings me to another concept, which is, to me, it feels like there's a part of it in that, which is letting go, right? How do you know to let go of a bad relationship? I mean, I've read so many of your poems and I'm like, oh gosh, that's the reason. Yes. You read that and you're like, oh, why didn't I see that? I'm so stupid. But in the middle of it, it's hard. But why is it so hard to let go? Why can't we just let go? It's not good for us. Because if you talk to a friend, right? If
you know
like,
everything
I've been in this
there is
scenario,
to know.
like you know what you would tell your friend. You're like, yeah, girl, you need to leave. I don't know what you're thinking. He's obviously, you could do so much better. And, then the tables get turned and you're there acting it all out. This is kind of what I reacted to earlier when I was fumbling around. And then the tables get turned on you and someone says to you, Danica, what would you say to me if I said all these things? And I was like, oh shit. You gotta go.
Yeah.
Why is that so hard?
But then you can't even do that, even after you realize it.
I mean, the last one took 5 years, so yeah, I get it.
So it's hard to let go. So before I get into letting go, this is what I'm gonna say. Self-love to me is imagining the person who you love the most. Okay, so imagine 1 or 2 people who you love the most. Put yourself next to them. So if one of these loved people to you is your partner, and he comes home at the end of the day and he has a very difficult day, what would you do? You would probably, do everything it takes to make sure that he's feeling better. You would give him time and space if he wanted that. You would put on a show that he likes or do something that he likes. Do you do that for yourself? Or do you come home and say, I had a rough day? Well, it's whatever. It's just like any other day. I'll just deal with it another time. You put yourself last. You put taking care of yourself as being a selfish act because there's someone else who needs your love or your time and it's like they're all more worthy of all of those great things that you have to offer than you are, right? Self-love is to say, I will not accept less than what I would give my most loved one because whether I like it or not, I am my most loved one. I am my number one priority. I am my number one responsibility. So that's why when you're sitting with a friend, you can tell her you need to let that guy go. But when you're sitting with yourself, you make up every excuse possible. And you also step into that role of, but I know all of these things about psychology and, there has to be an excuse. Bottom line is you are not treating yourself as one of your loved ones. You are treating yourself as one of those people who are on the margins of your own life. You're putting someone who is clearly hurting you at a higher level than you are. You are choosing to give that person a chance, multiple chances, knowing that you're hurting yourself. You're choosing that over telling yourself, Danica, what if this time you're actually wrong? What if this exception to the rule that you genuinely believe is the case, what if it's wrong? I know it's been, the pattern in your life in the past, but what if, this way of thinking is wrong? You're not even giving yourself the benefit of the doubt that you're giving that person who is hurting you over and over and over. And it all goes back to self-love. Where do you put yourself in your own life? Now, when you master that, you can let go. You can draw boundaries. You can make sure that no one ever gets comfortable disrespecting you or not giving you the love that you deserve. But you have to start at that point. When you get to a point where you're so deep in a relationship that's toxic any kind of relationship, whether it's at work or a romantic relationship or with family members, when you get to a point where you say, I can't do this anymore, and what am I going to do? And that's not where you are. Like, you don't have to just look at that moment. You have to go back and say, what got me here? Because you know what? There were red flags. I just chose not to see them, right?
Right.
If you think about it, every person that you meet, within the first few hours or few days or few weeks, they've already shown you certain parts of who they are. But you just... That's
insightful.
You silenced
Think about
all
them
of
in the
that.
beginning. Are they really any different? Not, I mean, like on some level, that first like snapshot of kind of what it really doesn't change that much.
There's a poem in the Nectar of Pain where I say, it is not their true colors that you suddenly see. Their true colors have always been there. It is your eyes that colored them with kindness. So it goes back to, you see the best in people, and that doesn't make you a bad person or naive, or it's not a weakness. It's a beautiful thing to be able to see the best in a person. But you can see the best in a person and draw a line and say, if this is going to hurt me, if this is going to violate my boundaries, I'll still color you with kindness, but from a distance. Yeah. I'm not allowing you more room into my life. I'm not falling in love with the potential that you have. I'm going to see you as you are.
I think that then it takes that bravery to stand your ground, right? I mean, like, we think to ourselves that if something goes away, whether it's a person or a job, that somehow will be less, or things will get worse. But truth never makes things worse. Honesty never makes things worse. It's going to come out eventually anyway. So I've said for a while, you know, whatever someone really truly thinks or feels, let it all come out. If that's what you think, if you're going to leave me over something silly like that, I better just go ahead and do it right away, because it's ridiculous. So, you know, things like that, like, just get there, because the truth will set you free. It will make you happy, and it will always come out eventually. And so delaying the inevitable only makes things more difficult. So facing them is the hard part. But also know that if you're not right for someone else, they're also not right for you, right? Like, if they don't really want you at your fullest, then you are choosing to see all the best things and ignoring those things that are really not enough for you and don't fit. And it doesn't mean everybody is enough for them on their own and for someone else eventually, but it doesn't mean this relationship is perfect, right? Don't be scared that something goes away, because something better is on its way. And I think that actually, I'm going to read Letting Go. This is because I think that this says this exact thing, which is something that, you know, for me, letting go has been a real common theme. I had to deal with letting go when it came to even my job. You know, when it came in 2017, I let go of a hell of a lot of things all within about 3 days, including where I live, my relationship, and my job. Wow. I wouldn't recommend that. It was a really heavy weekend. November of 17 was rough. But you know, it's letting go is one of those things. And you have to, I'm scared like anyone else when something is about to change or something might go away, and something that's familiar. You know, we get really comfortable in the familiar, and we've existed there, so we think it's safe. But I do have the awareness to say to myself that it could maybe be better than I could ever imagine. The universe has everything that you could ever want waiting for you if you'll just say yes to the truth and what feels in resonance, including the way you feel about yourself. And once you finally rise to the occasion of who you are, those people that are not serving you in the way that they need to be fall away, and you don't want them anymore, because you've now seen yourself in a new light, and you won't put up with that anymore. We can't treat others and see others unless we see ourselves for our true colors, right? So we treat others as we treat ourselves. So it's a process, and I go through it constantly. But here's letting go, and this is just one that really resonates with me, because I also think there's another level of this, which is the difference between quitting and letting go. And that's what I had to really realize with my job, was that I'm not quitting because it didn't go right, or I'm not going to be at this team anymore. I had to realize to myself and be honest with myself. And I remember the day I told my dad I don't really love racing, and he said, I know. And I was like,
why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me? Why did I feel so scared to say that? And but I had to be honest with myself, and so I had to learn that I was letting go. I wasn't quitting. I did it for 27 years. I would have quit a lot earlier if I really hated it that much. But so here we go. So we often attach letting go to negativity because we take it as giving up. And giving up is a sign of weakness. That's not always true. Sometimes letting go can be as positive as holding on, and sometimes holding on can be as negative as letting go. Letting go of what makes you miserable is the right decision to make, because while one opportunity that you're holding on to makes you cry your heart out, another opportunity is patiently waiting for you. It is patiently waiting for you to let go of what you have and hold on to this new opportunity. When you let go of what you have, do it the right way. Don't let go feeling weak. Don't let go feeling like you've done anything but your absolute best. Don't let go feeling like you are not worth the opportunity. It was not meant to be worth your pain, although it may have been painful. Think deeply into the purpose that made you take that opportunity. And if you've achieved that purpose, then take pride in it. Give yourself credit and don't ever let anybody put you down. Let go feeling like the biggest winner, and let loss go home with the opportunity that never appreciated you. Reflect, learn, move on. Hold on to the next exciting thing that the world opens up for you, and put your best forward. For your best will never let the inner you down, ever. I think that says it so well. So powerful. Letting go, such a concept, such a hard one, yet such a great one to grasp once you can understand the difference. And again, feeling into that resonance with you. I want to read one more. And this is from Sparks of Phoenix. And then I want to ask you really, some final question about just the big things that make a difference in your life. So this is about self-worth. It's much shorter. My home will never welcome me if I don't welcome myself. So what are the 3 biggest lessons that you've learned so far in your life? I learned that she's 29. I didn't know, but in your 29 years, tell me the 3 biggest things that you've learned.
The first one has to be that no obstacle that comes my way, no heavy weight that comes my way is meant to weigh me down. That's why I wrote, these mountains that you are carrying, you are only supposed to climb. Nothing that comes my way is meant to, make me stay in my spot or make me as small as I feel in the moment. That weight of the pain is meant to be felt. The opposite is meant to be felt. The opposite level of success or rising. And that's why I wrote Sparks of Phoenix, because I went through the burning and turning to ashes, and I rose as a phoenix as a result of that, as someone new as a result of that. So I believe that any struggle that's thrown your way could be what stops you in your life and keeps you stuck there for 20 or 30 years. But it could also be that what propels you to become the best you that you could possibly be. And talking about letting go, you don't let go of a relationship because you're afraid of, what if I don't find the same person? What if this is the best that I could do? What if I never feel that feeling I felt before? What if I'm alone for the rest of my life? What if this? What if that? It's always the what if the worst thing could happen, but what if the best thing could happen? No weight that comes your way, no struggle, no pain is meant to keep you where you are. It's meant to elevate you. It's meant to, there's a poem at closer to the end of Sparks of Phoenix where I say, look down at your pain all the way from the sky. Look how small it is. You're meant to rise above it to the point where you look at it and you say, oh, wow, I actually experienced so much pain because of that. So that's many lessons in one. These mountains that you are carrying, you were only supposed to climb. Another big lesson, and these are lessons I'm just thinking of now in the moment, where I am as a person, is just own who you are, In Sparks of Phoenix, I wrote, just as you've owned your pain fully, own your healing. Like, own yourself. Don't say, I am the way that I am because of this and this and this and this, and keep it at that. You say, I am the way that I am, or I am who I am because of all of these things. But who do I really want to be now? And who is this person in contrast to that person who I'm attaching all these labels and experiences to? And what do I need to do to come from that to this? Own who you are. Don't allow pieces of you to be owned by experiences or people or the way that they define you. Say, this is who I am, regardless of that. This is who I am, maybe as a result of that, but this is me. Like, stand in your own power. I know it's an overused way of saying, like, be yourself, but truly stand in your own power. When I walk now, I feel like there's this bubble of power around me where, before I used to, when you asked me, reflect back to that girl, who was she?
Oh, don't worry, I'm going to ask you who the girl is now, too, at the very end.
I used to constantly walk around with, oh, what is she thinking of me? And am I disappointing that person? And what must this behavior, or if I say this, what does it mean about me? It was kind of like arrows facing at me wherever I went. And I was, allowing those arrows to hit me. And now I walk around with a shield of power that says, I see you when you judge me. But I have the power to say, am I going to allow this in? Or am I going to deflect it back with the goodness that's inside of me, with the kindness that's inside of me? Own who you are, that good-hearted person that you are, that everyone made you believe at some point in your life was weak or naive. Own that person and say, I'm proud to be this person. I probably said like 10 different lessons. But
No, that's beautiful. I think that's well said. So now just finally, I asked you who the girl was a couple of years ago in the car. And now reflect to me who you see now today.
I see myself. That's the most powerful thing, is that I was waiting for someone to see me, waiting for someone to hear me, waiting for someone to love me. And now I give those things to myself. I see myself before, and it's not easy. Not saying I'm like this 24/7. This is the true me who I own. Before I wait for someone to see me, I see myself. Before I wait for someone to hear me, I listen to myself and I hear myself. And before I wait for someone to love me just so I could prove to myself that I'm worthy of being loved, I love myself. I say, how are you loving yourself? Before you wait for it from anyone else. And once you do that for yourself, you are unstoppable. Your life will be hard, but it's not harder than being a walking question mark that says, define me, define me, tell me who I am. You are defining yourself because you know your life is hard because you have to do it all on your own. But you know that you are doing it and you're not allowing anyone to penetrate that bubble of power that you have around you, that shield that's so beautiful, that still sees people and still acknowledges what's going on and still feels deeply, but doesn't allow any of those things to define you. Yeah.
Well said. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.